Thank you. This evening we are here to consider a city manager legal matter. Would you like to explain it, or should I read it first? Oh, sorry. Roll call. Thank you, Charlie. Roll call. Hold on a second, and I will get this. Start voting, please. City Clerk?
All councilors present and a quorum has been declared.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to regular business. Thank you, Charlie.
Just for the record, Councilor, now I got to remember everybody's last name. Vigil, Coleman have been asked to be excused and are not present, but a quorum of 4 councilors is present.
Thank you. And so the agenda, there's no agenda, doesn't say agenda approval here, but we can approve the agenda with the excusing of the 2 council people. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, or go ahead. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call. So please start voting. City Clerk? The agenda is approved.
Motion carries unanimous. Motion carries, sorry.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the business at hand. Ordinance number 17, 2015, an ordinance approving the whole cost of the improvements made within Special Improvement District number 14-1, together with incidental costs, approving and confirming the apportionment of such costs to each lot or tract of land in said district, assessing a share of such costs against each lot or tract of land in said district, and prescribing the manner for the collection and payment of said assessments. Eric, or?
Thank you. This has been in front of you for first reading already, and we went into some depth with that. Just briefly, the total construction costs were $553,000. The assessment roll apportions that cost amongst the 32 lots that are the lots within the Special Improvement District based on square footage of each lot. It exempts from payment 1/2 of street costs for lots that already were served by one out of their 2 corner streets. It also exempts from payment for water and sewer any lots that are currently served by water and sewer. And pursuant to your direction after first reading, the assessment roll has been modified between first and second reading such that it also takes out design costs for each of those lots that already had been served by either street or water or sewer. And just, I will be hopefully very quick with this. Just as an example, there are 5 lots that were affected by taking out the design costs. So there are 5 lots that changed between first reading and second reading. Those are lots 19, 20, 21, 27, and 28. And of course, all other lots changed as well, because when you remove the cost from them, you have to apportion it to the other lots. But let's just take, as an example, lot number... And when I said those lot numbers, those are our parcel numbers. They are not actual lot numbers. So we'll take lot number 20, which is one that's already served by water and sewer.
Okay.
On the current assessment roll, whoops, let me go back. I need to look at lot number 20 is owned by Dolores Lucero, and on the first reading, her upfront payout would have been $10,949. That's Dolores Lucero, Lot 6, Block 2. If we look at the new roll, we find Dolores Lucero. Here she is, right here. Lot 6, Block 2, it's $10,752. and I've already forgotten what the first number was. Let's see. Okay, so it went down about $200 to remove those costs. And those then, as I mentioned, get apportioned to everybody else.
Is that the adjusted, price or,
Taking out
For them?
their portion of the design costs dropped
Couple
their
$100.
assessment by $200.
So 200 times 5, so they only charged $1,000 for design?
That portion that was previously apportioned to them. So the overall design was spread among all the property owners. And so then when we took out, was it just half of that for the design or the full amount?
And the design was in 3 phases. The total design cost for the project was $6,600. They designed the streets, the water, and the sewer for the $6,600. So I applied $2,200 to each one of those aspects of design, and that's what I used to back out of these different assessments.
Does that provide the answer you needed?
Well, somewhat. I went back to the January 21st reading when we approved the SID by council. And at that time, the numbers for these people, the percentage of total, which equals 100%, these people at the bottom were assessed a much lower percentage rate than they are now. Even though it's gone down since the last meeting, from the 21st meeting of January, it has gone up.
I'm going to have to look at what you have in front of you because I would have to imagine in January we were still using the worst case scenario. So I'm not what number
Percentage of 100% of the cost, so it's still a percentage.
Let's see, we can pull that up.
January 21st, 2015. And by the calculations I do, and one of the properties I followed is Diana Hagerman. Initially, she was quoted $4,690. At the January 21st meeting, it went up to $7,234, based on a percentage of total cost being 100%, her portion being 1.31%. Her cost would have been $7,234. At the last meeting, it went up to $9,000. Where do I find here?
well, let's see, I don't have,
About 9,400, and now it's back down to 9,200. So from the January 21st meeting, it was $7,234. Now it's $9,197. This is the Exhibit A that we were given at the January 21st meeting to approve the SID. And that's based on 100% total cost. And that's my only
well,
observation. I mean, we can approve anything we want. I'm just pointing out that these costs have gone up continually.
I think another thing that I noticed was that Dolores Lucero's lot, which is immediately west of Richard Williams' lot, is, I believe, pretty much the same linear distance as Richard's lot, and there's a difference of about $2,000. And of course, Dominic is another $10,000, and so I'm somewhat concerned about that.
And I also looked at Dr. Williams' lot from the previous. His went up also substantially.
it's not based on linear footage, it's based on square footage.
I understand that. But as a percentage, even as a percentage, the difference is approximately $2,000 for pretty much the same work.
What's the name?
Dolores Lucero and Richard Williams.
I
They're right
remember.
across from one another.
Can we have the lights back on? Whoever's controlling the lights? Yeah.
Eric, are these the figures from, what figures are these in front of us right now?
So these are from the January 21 agenda. I'm looking at Diana Hagerman's lot, just 5 up from the bottom. And her total cost was $12,908.
We're not getting the full screen here.
That's right, because I scrolled over to see the end of it, which is the 12,908. So let's scroll back over. Here's Diana Hagerman. She's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up from the bottom.
Okay.
Well, let's go by percentage of 100%.
Okay, so her percentage for construction costs is 1.31%.
Right. Let's keep it apples to apples. Now we're looking at who?
Okay.
Lucero?
Okay, that's Hagerman. And Lucero. She's here.
There she is.
Here's what I'll lose her. She's 1.53%.
And who was the other one, Joe?
Richard Williams.
Hang on, let's see, so Lucero. Okay, Richard Williams, this one. 1.26%.
A really close
Okay,
one.
and that 0.5% is several $1,000s. When you take it against $500,000.
I'm not sure what that percent.
I think, Pat, can you come explain how the column for the percent relates to then how the costs are that are showing up? I think that might be what's creating some of the confusion.
Okay, the percentages are based on we took the total score. You guys chose to assess based on square footages rather than linear footages because it created a much more equitable disposition of costs, because that linear footage would have really hit the corner lot owners hard. So we took the total square footage of the lots in the project and figured the percentage of each individual lot. And that's where those percentages came from. And when you take that 0.5%, basically over $500,000, it does add up.
Okay.
Are you talking about the difference between Lucero and Williams?
Yes.
Right, so Williams has 9,900 square feet and Lucero has 12,100.
Okay.
The other part in relation to that percentage is that percentage doesn't change based on what services they have or not, because that percentage is what percentage of the total land mass
Correct.
exists within the SID. So
Correct.
that's what that percentage is. And then you assessed each, okay, did they have water? Yes or no?
Exactly.
Did they have the street? Yes or no? So then within those columns is then where the cost would show up differently. And then that percentage would be multiplied.
Correct. And it starts getting real complicated when I was backing the portions of design costs out, because I then had to create a new percentage, because I took the lots that were being backed out of the design cost and I had to apply that to 100% of the other properties that didn't make up the 100% of the whole. So we were applying a percentage of a cost to a proportional percentage of a proportional ownership.
And I understand that, and that's really not my point, because I'm only following one
So I'm
One
following,
owner.
I think, Councilor Gillespie, I'm following your point now, because I pulled up the current proposed assessment roll, and it shows Lucero at 1.95% of the total, Hagerman at 1.67, and Williams at 1.59, all of those numbers being higher than
Correct. my point.
Yeah, and I don't know what the answer to that is.
So when you,
Without researching it, I don't either.
can you make this a little bit bigger, Eric? So the first question, Pat, is this one of the spreadsheets you provided information into?
Mhm.
Okay, so, because we've had multiple people working on these spreadsheets, so I wanted to make sure I was clear on that. The next question is, so when you just talked about how you had to get a little bit funky with those percentages, could that potentially be what changed how this is showing?
Potentially. In all honesty, I've been through so many iterations of these spreadsheets. I'd have to just track it back.
And that's why I'm saying, to the benefit of the homeowners in those areas that already had services, we should go by the original spreadsheet on January 21st, assess those percentages to the new cost of $553,000, and that's where it's at.
Yes. I agree with you, Councilor Gillespie.
I mean, we can do it any way council wants, but
Does that sound right, Pat, or is that something you just have to relook and?
I'm confident that what we have right now is right.
proper.
There is a possibility we could have something wrong, but we've had so many eyes on this, I'd be surprised if there was a problem. But like I said, I would just have to go back and track it because everything has been so.
Yeah.
We've had several different cost estimates. I'm not sure at what version of cost estimates we were at when we passed the SID in January. I'd have to go back and look at all that.
I guess that's the question. It's quite possible that costs of different components, which were completely based on estimates in January, got rearranged with the final one when we knew what the actual cost of the components was. So that's certainly a way in which these percentages would differ.
no question.
Yeah, and
There's no question that there's variables here. I understand that. That was my only point. If council wants to prove it, I guess I'll have to vote no, but.
Well, the only other question is, I think we need to maybe have Eric clarify what happens if this does not pass tonight in regards to the additional costs that will get passed on to the property owners. Because if my impression is, if we don't make this time frame, we have to reset the clock in regards to notice, and then that's going to start some of the interest accrual, which then will hit all of the properties, and that may not be very much, but any direction you have, Eric, on that?
right, these figures are all based on capitalized interest stopping on November 9th, I think it is, which is when the final cost assessment payout deadlines occur. If we push that back, the capitalized interest will obviously become larger, and everyone's total bill will go up doing that. So, and I can't tell you by how much, but it is on the order of $10,000, I think, for the total interest to be apportioned amongst all those lots.
Well, can't we pass this SID based on these percentages that we were given in January?
Well, you can, but I think what Pat told you is that he's much more confident in these percentages as reflecting the actual costs that came out than those January percentages, which were based on estimated costs.
And then just the legal question of, if we did not send that as the notice, can they pass it as something that's different?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
Pat, do these procedures always apply to when there's new construction in any part of the city? Does this percentage apply every time that a new subdivision is established?
No, sir. No, sir. This is special to the SID. Normally these costs are paid by the developer when the subdivision is created.
Thank you.
So, Heather, you're saying that we couldn't pass this contingent at Pat, maybe look at the figures and make sure that they're correct? Or that would be changing it somewhat?
I think, Eric, maybe they could.
No.
No?
No.
No,
You ha-
well-
If you're going to pass something tonight, you actually have to pass something that is operable. Yeah, tangible, that's got the
Exactly.
numbers in it. You can't pass it and say, okay, Pat, go give us some numbers.
If
Well, I'm just saying that-
confident
But you
these
can
numbers
change it.
are truer than the previous numbers, I guess I can go along with that.
Sure.
To my knowledge, what we have before you tonight is absolutely correct, and I can say that with all honesty.
Okay, I'm good.
One comment I had, on these cost savings, were they relayed back to the people that, some of these people had concerns because they already had all the infrastructure. So was it relayed back to them saying then that we're gonna save you so much and so forth? But,
I believe so, yes.
okay. Because that was their biggest
We
concern.
we've tried to make that clear from the very beginning, was that if they were already served by one of the utilities, they wouldn't be charged
Sure.
for that. We tried to make that abundantly clear. Councilor Gillespie, when he had us go through and back out the design costs for those, that completely removed them from the association with that utility that they had already had service from. So that was the right thing to do.
Good. I appreciate that.
And this is amortized over
15.
15 years? Okay. Thank you.
Let me just, I wanted to address a comment that was raised in the letter you have in the packet. We did receive one comment letter from one of the SID members, and one of his concerns was that he thought if he didn't make his total upfront payment within the 30 days, that he was stuck with the 15-year amortization and he could not pay it off early, and that's not correct. He can pay it off at any time.
And who was that? I did not see that letter.
Okay, let me pull that up.
I remember that discussion, but it's been some time back.
Robert Webb.
Right, right.
Okay.
Okay, we're good. Council, any further questions of staff? Any further discussion? Let's get it back on the screen. Yes. I will entertain a motion, council.
We need to do a public hearing first.
Oh, okay. Well, with that, I will open up, thank you for that information. With that, I'll open a public hearing on ordinance number 17-2015, an ordinance approving the whole cost of the improvements made with Special Improvement District number 14-1, together with incidental costs, approving and confirming the apportionment of such costs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those in favor or against, please come to the podium and state your wishes. Thank you, Mr. Van Rye.
It seemed like there was a pregnant pause there that maybe perhaps I should say something, but I hate to be,
Please
Mr.
identify.
McCann usually takes care of it, but, since he's not here, I'll have to. It's Arvin Van Rye, and it's in staying consistent with where you're mailing at 1511 East Florence Boulevard, Casa Grande, Arizona 85122, and that's where my wife resides. Hopefully I'll be able to go there soon. Otherwise, I live in Creed, which is the address I gave last night, but the confusion of where to mail the information has been, I think, we just better stay with one address. I'm thinking that in all of this, I wish that we could have had the cost less, but I think that in all reality, the city did, and I don't want to say this to be condescending whatsoever, but the city has done an excellent job of managing this project and did it just as efficiently as I think I could have, and probably more efficiently than I did. And also the costs that you're talking about and some of the concerns that you have are, although legitimate, they are the cost of construction. And in order to do it right, it has to be done that way. And in all due respect to the staff, they did it, and I was involved as far as keeping in touch with it. They did it right. I think one of the things that set me back too when I saw the numbers is remember that we are looking at the grand total is interest is also reflected in that number if I'm not mistaken. So it looks higher than what it cost was, but in reality that's what you're going to pay if you run it all the way to the bitter end. So I think when we look at it, they're reflecting correctly what it's going to cost you, but it would be the same as buying a car. You may pay one price for the car, but the actual cost of that car when you get to the end is considerably different. And so I think in fairness, when you look at that and you say these numbers are more, they are, but it reflects the true cost with the time value of money. I would request humbly that you please approve this, because then we can move forward. We don't want to incur any more cost than necessary. And I do believe that in many cases, some of these people, including perhaps in the very short distance into the future, a lot of people are going to pay this off. But at the rate that we've gotten by virtue of the bond, it's going to make sense for some people to stretch it out because it's going to be less than they could have borrowed the money for themselves. Again, I would ask that you please pass this so that we can move forward. We have a beautiful subdivision out there right now, and there's a lot of participants in there, not just me. I tend to be the one that speaks the most, but I think I speak for the majority of the people because they voted for it, is that it's going to improve the property values, and it's also going to improve the opportunity for the city to grow and have housing. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Van Roy, for that observation and that clarification. Appreciate it. Ms. Daniel?
I'm Christina Daniel, and I live at 732 Weber Drive here in Alamosa. I've been kind of watching this, and I've been very impressed with the amount of energy that has gone into it. I think the thing that I would request, and very much in support of it, is to make sure that the people who are affected get very clear communication after it's decided about how this is all going to play out for them. I do know Mr. Webb personally, and so for him to not understand it, I think says something, because I think he's a pretty thorough guy, even though sometimes, it can be tough to communicate every piece of it. So I would just ask that the people who are impacted get this final decision very clearly, what they're responsible for, what the limitations and expectations are. So that's all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Now I will close the public hearing on ordinance number 17-25 and bring it back to council for a decision or further discussion.
I guess one more comment, Mayor, if I may, and pretty much asking the same thing Christine was just asking, is that we notify these people exactly if they're having a cost saving, to make sure that they understand that they are getting that cost saving, because like I said earlier, that some of these people, that was their biggest concern, was the fact that why am I having to pay all this extra money if I already have all this infrastructure and streets and so forth in? So I think that would be more not comforting, but somewhat comforting to these people if they know that we at least acknowledge that and we followed through on something like that. So,
thank you, Councilor Grego. Is that something that staff is open to? Heather?
Yes, because I think a large majority of the properties are pretty straightforward in that they needed all the services, and then there's the handful of properties that had some varying services within that we can explain what they were charged for or not charged for.
So an informational note of some kind.
And we will have to send communication to them as it is anyways, with the information of what needs to be paid and when it can be paid by and that type of stuff as well.
Thank you, Heather. Councilor Gillespie?
Yes, I appreciate staff's work on this. I know it's been time consuming. They've spent a lot of time on it. I think all of us want it to be accurate and be fair to the homeowners. I think in the end, we have a product that is excellent, and no question, I've driven over that, an excellent job done by the city. So I appreciate that. And with that, I'll make the motion we approve ordinance number 17, 2015.
Thank you. Councilor Stefano.
I just wanted to comment, are the people, the property owners, are they satisfied with everything that's been going on with their percentages and stuff like that? And it is a beautiful subdivision. Just wondering.
I think overall, how Mr. Van Rye characterizes it is, could we have done it faster? So maybe they could start building this year, potentially. Are they glad overall that it's done and something's going to be able to happen in the future? I think that's the overwhelming thing. Would they have liked the prices to have been lower? I think anyone would say that. But at the end of the day, we had to take what bids were there, and at the beginning of the process, you guys reduced some of the scope of work, such as the sidewalks and those types of things, to try to take cost into account. So, if they were to design it, I don't know if they'd include everything, but I think with the project being done and being able to move forward, a majority of them, other than those that already had built, are probably happy. I think those who have built didn't see much need to have anything done, and so there's probably some consternation there.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'll second that motion that Mr. Gillespie made.
Thank you. I've got a motion and a second on ordinance number 1720-15. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, start voting, please. Clerk.
Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Council, and thank you, staff, for all the hard work you've done on this. That concludes our regular business, and with that, I will adjourn this meeting.